Welcome to the BioWin Expert Talk podcast series. In this podcast, we will leave the floor to experts in the industry on specific relevant topics. Today we have Pierre Dumoulin, Grants and Incentives Manager at PwC, with us to talk about financing your ambitions. As a growing and/or highly innovative company, financing your ambitions may prove to be a challenging process. The landscape of funding opportunities is scattered across different government bodies and agencies, as well as across various types of incentives and instruments. During the PwC podcast series, you will be guided through the broad spectrum of relevant grants, incentives, and other financing solutions, both at the Belgian and European level, including the EIB financial instruments to finance your ambitions.
The European Investment Bank is not as well known as it should be in our country. Which is a shame because I think, as Sylvie Ponchot said in L'Echo recently, Wallonia is one of the powerful medtech valleys of Europe, and the EIB, or the European Investment Bank, is actually looking to support companies in the sector, as was the case for example, Istar Medical, that obtained actually an investment of 20 million to help the commercialization of its medicine to, if I'm not mistaken, combat glaucoma. Now, what is the EIB and why is it different from other European funding schemes or other European investment sources? The EIB can be seen as a source of long-term reimbursable financing for viable projects, furthering, let's say, the EU policy objectives. So the EIB does not provide funding in the form of grants or incentives. No, it provides financial assistance in the form of loans, equity, or guarantees, with loans being the main activity. Now, a distinction, however, is made based on the size of the requesting company. SMEs that are and remain the main focus of the EIB can obtain intermediate loans. What does that mean? Or let's say, why is that distinction there? The distinction is there to make sure that both SMEs and larger projects, let's say, have a chance on those investments. So intermediate loans, what does that mean? It means that the EIB makes loans to, let's say, local banks and other intermediate financial institutions, which then subsequently on-lend to the SME. So these loans are not for, let's say, everything, of course. These loans are meant to go to projects in the growth or maturity, in let's say the growth or maturity stages. In case we're looking at projects in the earlier stages of growth, the European Investment Fund, which is another institution, can be interesting, as that provides and guarantees to support classic loans. So on this slide, we see there are three types, or let's say there are different types of assistance from the European Investment Bank. On the one hand, we have the financial assistance. So as I said, we have the loans, equity, guarantees, which each of them having their specific focus areas. As you see for loans, for example, sustainable growth, job creation, direct loans, and intermediate loans. Equity then focusing more on stimulating private capital, venture debt, co-financing, and microfinance. Guarantees then are also, again, a specific element. Guarantees are really there to cover, as it maybe says, or for some people very logically, covering the risks of large and small projects, and enhancing, let's say, your attractability to more classic financial institutions who obtain, for example, loans. Next to the financial assistance, we also have the advisory services of the European Investment Bank, which should not be neglected. We have the strategic development, market development, and project development. Those are the three, let's say, areas around which the EIB has structured its advisory services, which means that basically, as an applicant or as a promoter of a project, you can go towards the EIB and ask for their advice on those aspects. Interesting there is that they will help you to not only look at, for example, the financial parts, but also looking at the structuring of that project and what needs to go, let's say, or what needs to happen in order to go to that next step in terms of financing on the one hand, but also attractability of co-investors, investors, go-to-market, etc. Market access, sorry, is a better word. Now, practically, so as we said, the EIB is a European instance, which means that it follows the priorities set out by the European Union. More important, so we see that those are the priorities that the EIB sets today. We have the climate, of course, and environmental sustainability, innovation and skills, infrastructure, focus on SMEs, cohesion and development. Looking at those priorities, what do we see? Well, that the opportunities for companies active in pharma, biotech, life sciences are quite high, because those are the let's say the focus areas, or the points that the European Investment Bank really would like to boost or would like to support, following, of course, these priorities. But I think it makes sense when we look at innovation and skills and climate, even climate is possible. There are quite some opportunities, and it should absolutely not be neglected, knowing that, as I said, the EIB is looking to support this sector. Now, also important on this slide is, let's say, the practical aspect of it all. I also wanted to touch on the practical aspects. In case you want to obtain a loan from the EIB, what are the next steps, so to speak? First of all, you should look at the size of your projects. Smaller projects, as I said, can obtain indirect funding via an intermediary bank. In Belgium, that's KBC or ING. Larger projects, so above 25 billion, can request direct funding or direct loans from the European Investment Bank. Now, different from a grant or an incentive, because as I said, this is not an incentive, different from those elements, what information should you then bring, let's say, to the table, or what is requested from you as an applicant? Well, in fact, simply the information you would be requested to share with a bank when looking at a classical loan. So that will be then information on indeed the borrower or the promoter and the project itself. Depending on the intermediary, so if you would go, for example, to KBC or to ING, they can also, of course, add again specific requirements, as they will treat it, of course, as a loan application. Now, I want to finish this part of this EIB part with mentioning also that the EIB only finances up to 50% of the total investment cost and of your project. So it's not so that you can have a preferable loan with the EIB covering all your expenses. No, it will only be limited to 50% of the total project cost, which means that alternative resources, either equity or own financing or other loans, should also be investigated to complete the EIB participation to your project. Another element is, I think it speaks for itself, but as it is with cash grants, as it is with classical loans, here it will be very important, as it says on the slide, that your financial model is correct. Let's say that it is viable, that it shows that it is well thought through, and that you are presenting a feasible project with a feasible outcome in a feasible and timely manner.
Thank you for listening to the BioWin Expert Talk podcast. We hope the content was valuable for your business and that it meets your expectations. Do not hesitate to contact the BioWin team if you have any further questions or if you need more information on a certain topic.